Welcome to AD Horror Show. The night was dark and stormy, a fitting backdrop for the terror that awaited those who dared to check into the Timberlake Motel. Nestled on the outskirts of a desolate town, the motel's neon sign flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows across the deserted parking lot. Amelia and Michael, a young couple on a cross-country road trip, had no choice but to seek refuge at the Timberlake Motel when their car broke down miles from the nearest town. They walked into the dimly lit lobby, where a tired-looking clerk handed them a rusted key with the number 13 etched onto it. Ignoring the superstition associated with the number, they headed to their room. The hallway was freezing, and the air was thick with an unsettling silence. As they entered room 13, they felt an inexplicable chill creep down their spines. Amelia and Michael tried to settle in for the night, but strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, and the room's temperature plummeted. They heard whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Desperate to escape the room, they rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen force held them captive. In the dim light, they saw ghostly apparitions in old-fashioned clothing, each more terrifying than the last. As the clock struck midnight, the room's walls began to bleed, and the whispers grew louder and more sinister. The apparitions drew nearer, their eyes filled with malevolence. Amelia and Michael clung to each other, their fear reaching its peak. Just as all hope seemed lost, a bolt of lightning struck outside, illuminating the room and revealing a hidden message scrawled on the wall in blood: "Help us." The spirits' faces contorted in agony, and the room trembled with their anguish. Summoning every ounce of courage, Amelia and Michael uttered a prayer for the tormented souls. The apparitions let out anguished wails and vanished into the darkness. With a final, deafening crash of thunder, the room returned to normal. The following morning, they checked out of room 13, never to return to the Timberlake Motel. The clerk simply nodded, acknowledging the horror they had endured. The couple would never forget the night they checked out at midnight from the haunted room 13, a motel room that concealed the dark secrets of the past and the restless spirits trapped within. As Amelia and Michael left the Timberlake Motel, their hearts still raced with the memories of the night's horrors. They couldn't shake the feeling that the motel held secrets far darker than they could have ever imagined. Their cross-country road trip continued, but the weight of room 13's malevolent presence lingered. They decided to do some research, and as they delved into the motel's history, they uncovered a chilling tale that sent shivers down their spines. Decades ago, the Timberlake Motel was a haven for travelers and locals alike. It had been a place of laughter and joy, hosting weddings, parties, and celebrations. However, room 13 had a sinister reputation, even back then. Legend had it that a series of gruesome murders had occurred within its walls, and no one who entered the room was ever the same. The couple's research revealed a newspaper article from the 1950s detailing the unsolved murders of a family who had stayed in room 13. The article spoke of blood-soaked walls, an eerie message written in blood, and the mysterious disappearance of the motel's owner shortly afterward. Amelia and Michael couldn't believe their findings. They were convinced that the restless spirits they had encountered were the tormented souls of the murdered family. Determined to put the spirits to rest, they returned to the Timberlake Motel, determined to confront the evil that lurked within room 13. This time, they were armed with knowledge and a plan. They enlisted the help of a local paranormal investigator, who believed their story and agreed to assist. Armed with an array of ghost hunting equipment, they entered the room once more. As the clock approached midnight, the temperature dropped, and the room began to quiver. The investigator called out to the spirits, pleading with them to move on to the afterlife. The apparitions appeared again, but this time, they seemed more sorrowful than malevolent. Amelia and Michael spoke to the spirits, promising to uncover the truth about their deaths and seek justice for them. Tears welled up in the eyes of the apparitions as they slowly dissipated, their anguish finally easing. With the spirits gone, room 13 felt different. The temperature returned to normal, and the room's walls were no longer stained with blood. It seemed as though the motel had finally released the grip of its dark past. The following day, Amelia and Michael returned to the motel's lobby, where the once tired clerk now appeared relieved. He thanked them for helping the tormented souls find peace and handed them a newly polished key to room 13, free of charge, as a gesture of gratitude. The couple left the Timberlake Motel, forever changed by their encounter with the supernatural. As they continued their journey, they couldn't help but wonder if there were more haunted places out there, waiting for someone brave enough to confront the darkness within. The night air outside the Blackwood Lodge was frigid and thick with an eerie stillness. Haley and Jason, their nerves still on edge, stepped away from the motel, leaving behind room 666 and the malevolent force that had trapped them. They knew they had barely escaped the clutches of something ancient and sinister. As they made their way through the dense forest, the silence was oppressive. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, and shadows danced in the moonlight, reminding them of the horrors they had endured. They walked until they reached a nearby town, where they decided to put their experience behind them, believing that they had left the terror of room 666 far behind. But the malevolent entity of the Blackwood Lodge was not so easily defeated. It hungered for souls, and it wouldn't let Haley and Jason go so easily. Unbeknownst to them, it had latched onto their very beings, marking them as its next victims. In the days that followed, strange and terrifying events began to unfold in their lives. They would wake up in the middle of the night, their room plunged into icy darkness, the air thick with a haunting chill. Shadows moved in the corners of their vision, and whispers echoed in their ears, indecipherable yet filled with malice. Desperate to break free from the malevolent entity's grasp, they sought help from paranormal experts, mediums, and even priests. But the entity resisted every attempt to banish it. It seemed to grow stronger with each encounter, feeding off their fear and despair. As their lives descended into a nightmare, Haley and Jason were forced to confront the entity head-on. Armed with the knowledge they had gleaned from the diary they found in room 666, they returned to the Blackwood Lodge one final time, determined to put an end to the curse. Inside the motel, they faced the entity, standing in the very room where their ordeal had begun. With trembling voices, they recited the incantation once more, this time calling upon the spirits of the Tremaine family, whose tragic fate they had learned about in the diary. A violent and otherworldly struggle ensued, with the malevolent entity fighting to maintain its hold. But the spirits of the Tremaine family, awakened by the incantation, joined the battle. The room shook, and the air crackled with energy as a fierce spectral confrontation unfolded. In a blinding flash of light, the malevolent entity was banished, its dark presence vanquished by the combined strength of the Tremaine spirits and Haley and Jason's determination to break free. Gasping for breath, they realized they had finally triumphed over the malevolent force that had plagued them. They left the Blackwood Lodge for good, grateful for the spirit's intervention and determined to move forward with their lives. But they knew they would forever carry the scars of their encounter with room 666, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin, and where the malevolent forces of the supernatural sought to ensnare those who dared to enter. The Blackwood Lodge would forever remain a dark chapter in their lives, a reminder of the horrors they had faced and the resilience it took to escape the motel that never let you leave. Nestled deep in the heart of a remote forest, far from the prying eyes of civilization, stood the enigmatic Blackwood Lodge. It was a motel that had become infamous for its unsettling history. The neon sign flickered ominously, and as darkness descended upon the forest, the eerie glow of Room 666 seemed to beckon travelers toward an inescapable nightmare. Haley and Jason, an adventurous couple seeking solitude in nature, had heard the legends surrounding Blackwood Lodge but dismissed them as mere tales told to spook tourists. They arrived late one stormy night, their car's headlights cutting through the dense fog that clung to the trees. Inside the lodge's dimly lit lobby, a grizzled innkeeper handed them a weathered key, its label bearing the ominous Room 666. Haley hesitated for a moment, unnerved by the room number, but Jason brushed it off as a coincidence. As they entered the room, they were immediately struck by its chilling aura. The air felt damp and heavy, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. A single flickering bulb barely illuminated the room's decrepit interior. Ignoring their growing unease, they settled in for the night. But as the hours passed, strange occurrences unfolded. The room's temperature dropped to an unbearable chill, and shadows danced on the walls, taking grotesque forms. Haley and Jason's unease turned to dread as they realized the room was locking them in. No matter how hard they tried, the door remained immovable. Panic set in as they understood that they were trapped in Room 666, a place that seemed to defy the laws of reality. As the clock struck midnight, the room seemed to come alive. Sinister whispers filled the air, their words indecipherable yet laden with malevolence. The walls cracked and groaned, and the ancient wooden floorboards creaked under unseen pressure. Desperate to escape, they frantically searched for clues. In a hidden compartment, they found an old diary belonging to a previous occupant, a man who had suffered a similar fate. His desperate writings spoke of an otherworldly force that hungered for souls, trapping anyone who dared to stay in Room 666. Haley and Jason realized they had unwittingly stumbled upon a malevolent entity that fed on the fear and despair of its victims. With their hope waning, they knew they had to fight back or risk becoming another entry in the diary. Summoning their resolve, they recited an incantation they found in the diary, a plea for release from the room's curse. A deafening, otherworldly roar filled the room as the entity fought against their efforts, but they pressed on, their voices growing stronger. With one final incantation, the room quivered, and the malevolent force relented. The door slowly creaked open, and they stumbled into the corridor, gasping for breath. Outside, the forest had fallen silent, and Blackwood Lodge stood cloaked in darkness. They left the cursed motel behind, vowing never to return. Room 666, the motel that never let you leave, remained shrouded in mystery, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was blurred, and the supernatural reigned supreme. On a moonless night, with thick fog enveloping the desolate town of Willowbrook, Sarah and Mark found themselves stranded far from civilization. Their car had broken down on an isolated stretch of highway, leaving them with no choice but to seek refuge at the decrepit Willowbrook Inn, a place notorious for its sinister history. The motel's neon sign, barely flickering, read, "No vacancy," but the receptionist reluctantly handed them a rusty key to room 13. "It's the only room left," she whispered, her eyes filled with dread. Ignoring the ominous number, Sarah and Mark ventured down a dimly lit corridor, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they entered the room, a bone-chilling draft washed over them, and the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening thud. Despite the chill in the air, the room felt oppressively hot. Sarah turned on the flickering lamp by the bedside table, revealing a faded portrait of a family from a bygone era. An unsettling sense of being watched settled over them. As the clock ticked towards midnight, the room came alive with malevolent activity. Shadows danced on the walls, and whispered voices filled the air. Sarah and Mark felt an invisible presence closing in on them, a malevolent force from a realm beyond. Desperation seized them, and they made a frantic dash for the door, but it refused to open. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped with the malevolent spirits of the Willowbrook Inn. The apparitions, clad in clothes from a distant century, grew more menacing by the moment. Sarah and Mark could barely breathe as the spirits closed in, their eyes glowing with hatred. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a flicker of candlelight caught their attention. They turned to see a ghostly figure, a woman dressed in a tattered Victorian gown, holding a single candle. With a mournful expression, the woman beckoned them towards the room's decrepit fireplace. There, etched into the soot-covered bricks, was a cryptic message: "Beware the room of lost souls." Summoning their courage, Sarah and Mark followed the woman's guidance and spoke aloud the message. A violent gust of wind swirled around them, extinguishing the candle, but the malevolent spirits let out anguished cries and dissipated into the shadows. The room returned to its oppressive stillness, the spirits vanquished for now. Sarah and Mark, exhausted and trembling, managed to force the door open and fled room 13. As they stumbled into the motel's lobby the next morning, the receptionist offered them a knowing nod. Willowbrook Inn had tested them, and they had survived the night. They vowed never to return, haunted by the malevolent spirits they had encountered, and the chilling message that had saved them from a sinister fate. In the days that followed their harrowing night at the Willowbrook Inn, Sarah and Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Their curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to dig deeper into the motel's dark history. Their research led them to the town's historical archives, where they uncovered a disturbing series of events dating back over a century. The Willowbrook Inn had once been the grand estate of a wealthy family, the Tremaines. In the late 1800s, a devastating fire had claimed the lives of the Tremaine family, leaving the mansion in ruins. The couple's investigation took them to the local library, where they pored over old newspaper articles and documents. They discovered that room 13 had once been the Tremaine family's parlor, the very room where the fire had started. The spirits they had encountered were believed to be the restless souls of the Tremaines, unable to find peace even in death. Driven by a sense of duty, Sarah and Mark returned to Willowbrook, determined to put the malevolent spirits to rest once and for all. Armed with knowledge and the understanding that the spirits were seeking justice, they enlisted the help of a local historian and a psychic medium. On the night of their return, they entered room 13, which was now infused with an eerie calmness. The historian and psychic medium initiated a séance, attempting to communicate with the spirits. As the clock struck midnight, a cold breeze swept through the room, and the candle flames flickered ominously. The psychic medium spoke to the spirits, offering them the chance to tell their story. The room's temperature plummeted, and the apparitions of the Tremaine family appeared, their faces etched with sorrow. Through the medium, they conveyed their anguish and longing for justice. Sarah and Mark listened intently, recording every word. The spirits revealed that the fire had been deliberately set by a jealous neighbor, falsely accusing the Tremaines of wrongdoing. The family had perished unjustly, their lives cut short in a tragedy they hadn't caused. As the truth was revealed, the room seemed to crackle with energy. The malevolent spirits transformed into ethereal forms, their anger and resentment dissipating. With a final, peaceful sigh, the Tremaines departed, their spirits finally finding solace. Room 13, once a place of torment and suffering, now felt tranquil and serene. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the room's temperature returned to normal. Sarah and Mark knew that they had played a crucial role in bringing closure to the restless spirits. The next morning, they left Willowbrook behind, forever changed by their encounter with the malevolent spirits and the fulfillment of a centuries-old quest for justice. The Willowbrook Inn, no longer a place of dread, stood silently as a testament to the power of truth and the boundless reach of the supernatural. In a desolate stretch of highway, surrounded by a vast, foreboding forest, the abandoned Pinehaven Motor Lodge stood as a silent sentinel to the horrors that had taken place within its walls. The neon sign, long devoid of life, flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement below. Sarah and David, thrill-seekers in search of the macabre, had heard whispered tales of Pinehaven's dark history. They arrived one moonless night, their car's headlights the only source of illumination as they navigated the overgrown road leading to the forsaken motel. The motel's entrance bore a chilling welcome. The front desk was barren, a once-polished counter now covered in layers of dust. Cobwebs clung to the corners of the lobby, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. An old ledger lay open, its pages filled with the names of those who had checked in but never checked out. Despite the disarray, Sarah and David pressed on, their sense of adventure pushing them deeper into the heart of Pinehaven. They received a worn key from the front desk, its tag bearing the room number 13. A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she examined it, but David waved it off as a mere coincidence. As they stepped into the narrow, dimly lit hallway leading to room 13, a musty odor filled the air. The floor creaked beneath their feet, and their shadows seemed to elongate, casting grotesque figures on the peeling wallpaper. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Upon entering room 13, they found it in a state of decay, with furniture draped in dusty sheets. The air grew colder by the minute, and the windows rattled as if by some unseen presence. Sarah and David tried to make the best of their eerie surroundings, dismissing their growing unease as mere nerves. But as the clock ticked towards midnight, Pinehaven Motor Lodge came alive with malevolent energy. The room's temperature plummeted, and the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural life. Whispers filled the air, their words too faint to comprehend but laden with malevolence. Desperation gripped Sarah and David as they realized that they were trapped within room 13. The door, once accessible, now resisted their every attempt to open it. Panic set in as they understood the chilling truth: Pinehaven had a sinister secret, one that demanded their souls as payment. As the room's atmosphere grew ever more oppressive, Sarah stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the peeling wallpaper. Inside, they discovered a series of old, blood-stained letters. Each one detailed the harrowing experiences of those who had stayed in room 13, their desperate pleas for escape, and their ultimate demise. They realized they were not the first to encounter the malevolent force that dwelled within Pinehaven Motor Lodge. It was a cursed place, where the living were tormented and the dead were bound to suffer for eternity. With their last ounce of courage, Sarah and David recited an incantation they found in the letters, a desperate plea for freedom. The room quivered, the malevolent energy fighting against their efforts, but they pressed on with unwavering resolve. As the incantation reached its climax, a blinding light erupted from the walls, and the room convulsed with a supernatural force. The malevolent presence shrieked in agony and withdrew, leaving room 13 in an eerie stillness. The door, once impenetrable, creaked open, allowing Sarah and David to escape the clutches of Pinehaven Motor Lodge. They stumbled out into the moonlit night, gasping for breath, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the malevolent force they had encountered. As they left Pinehaven behind, they knew that the motel's sinister legacy would forever haunt their memories. The abandoned Motor Lodge, where no one survived the night, remained a chilling testament to the supernatural horrors that lurked in the darkest corners of the world, waiting for those brave enough to seek them out. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to our channel for more exciting content like this.